Hey, 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 and welcome to this week's Genius Zone. Now, as you guys know, we bring in specialists who are passionate and powerful about what they do. So you are getting the real deal. And in this incredible podcast, we have the beautiful Cheryl, and Cheryl is an I would call her a scientist, exploring the living intelligence of the human microbiome through fermentation. I didn't say that properly, but she's going to correct me in a moment. Lifestyle, traditional food, wisdom. We're going to touch on inflammation. We're going to touch on, why the world has got so much chronic sickness, and the fact that Cheryl believes we're not really broken. And listen to it to the very, very end. You're going to get some incredible health tips and education, because you are a walking information library, Cheryl. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And shall we call you Cheryl Paswater is your full name?
Yes.
And I almost feel like I want to call you Professor. I'm not even joking. Because from the arts to the masters to the, incredible intelligence that you have. So I'm going to kick off by asking you this question. What inspired you in the first place to really get in touch with the way the human body is, particularly around microbiomes?
So, and by the way, you did say it right, fermentation. So you were correct earlier, so you nailed it. I think the world has higher power, however you want to see it, has a funny way of doing things. And so I guess to go backwards in time a little bit, I actually started out in the art world, and but fast forward, I was leaving graduate school and just had finished my dual master's degrees, and left grad school, and my body just sort of kind of crapped out. I was sick all the time. I was having chronic ear infections, and I was having asthma attacks, and I was just kind of a hot mess, sort of greenish gray, like Kermit the Frog in color. But, I'd had things that had been happening much further before this. But at that time, I, would go to the doctor and I would get antibiotics, and I would go to the doctor and they would put me on another steroid. I'd go to the doctor and they'd give me another antibiotic. And this cycle just kept perpetuating. And I really got to a place where it was like, I wasn't getting better. If anything, I was getting worse. I wasn't really getting better.
Sorry. We're just having a mic dropping. That was just the mic drop moment. That was the mic drop moment. So we won't edit that out. But,
yes.
Cheryl, I just want to say this is really the reason that so many people like yourself are coming onto this show, because you are the living and real deal of someone who knows what it's like to have gone through so many health issues. And obviously you also understand about what antibiotics does to our systems. And I love the fact that you said to me backstage that the body wasn't broken. So, what does it take? What is the infinite intelligence all about, so we can get our body back into balance about?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think it's asking ourselves the deeper questions. I mean, that's what happened with me. I realized these people aren't giving me anything other than the same things over and over and over again. I'm not getting any answers. I'm not moving forward. I knew something was radically wrong. And actually the day before my 30th birthday, I woke up in the middle of the night. I was having an asthma attack. And if you've ever had an asthma attack, that's terrifying in its own right. But I had like a real awakening, and it mean like a really big divine sort of intervention. It was like, if you don't do something drastic, you're gonna die. Like, you know. And I think the thing is like we all have to have our place of reckoning, of like realizing like there's time, place, and circumstance for all kinds of things, right? If my arm gets ripped off, I want a surgeon, you know. Like,
yes.
Occasionally antibiotics can be life-saving, but they do so much damage. And I think for 95% of things, we don't actually need them. You know, like we have to kind of change our thinking hats of how we kind of move in the world. And I think we all have moments, you know. I mean, I get clients who come to me, and they come to me because it's like, oh, I'm realizing I'm trapped in this circular loop, and I'm not getting answers, and I'm not getting better. And so they're taking their power back, you know. And I think that's really what it is. It's us following our true north and getting in touch with our intuition, which has been, I think, stolen from us. You know, we have gotten so far away from our intuitive selves. Like, how many things can we support ourselves? Like, you know, we can be our, like, I don't want to say our own doctors to some degree, but kind of, you know. It's like, and we've gotten so far from, I think, the earth, and being in contact with Mother Nature, and being in contact with something bigger than ourselves, however you choose to see that, whether that is, you know, God, Jesus, Mother Nature, Earth, Gaia, you know, like however, like I think it all
100%. I mean, just being grounded. I know that I don't know whether you follow me on Facebook, but last night I wrote a post about, because we're winter here in Western Australia, sadly, because I do not like winter. And obviously you're not in winter wearing that tank top. But I'm sadly, I would rather be wearing the tank top. I can absolutely assure you. But, you know, my husband passed in November of last year. And he really thought outside of the box. And I know you love that. He was a very brilliant chiropractor. And, you know, he held a lot of theories, like the first thing laid down at birth is the nervous system. You know, he understood the infinite intelligence of the body. And he was all about doing muscle testing, which I know that's what you do, and aligning the body to bring it back in. And I mean, he died of the most rarest disease. And, you know, he also died with a legacy. He was a teacher while he was on this earth, and he's now a teacher in his death, because he passed away from CJD, which is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, like a form of mad cow. And as a result, his brain has been donated to science. But he was, up until he was almost invincible. He would agree with so many things. He was very anti, you know, things like antibiotics. He did everything the natural way. He also didn't vaccinate his kids. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of tackle inflammation here for a moment. And I'm going to talk about that, because obviously that is one of the biggest things that, you know, seems to be the problem today. But as you said to me before, it's not always a bad thing, because inflammation is obviously there for a reason. What I'd really like to ask, this is a question I would have for you. So people that are suffering, I know Ian, in his passing, he would actually disagree with this. However, what's your thoughts on getting kind of like cortisone injections and having those kind of things if you've got, you know, really bad pain in your body?
Right. I mean, I think the thing is, like, fundamentally, everything comes with a cost in the body on the other end of something. So there's time, place, circumstance, right? It's like I said, you know, my arm gets ripped off, I want a surgeon. With that is going to come some drugs. You know what I mean? Like,
definitely.
But I think the thing is like, and I can say this as somebody who's had cortisone injections and had inhalers with cortisones and all kinds of things. But like, the damage that does also to your adrenal system on the other end of that and to the gut lining is a conversation that has to be had, right? Like nothing is benign. Even sometimes supplements are not benign, right? Like we have to be able to um, realistically have those, conversations. It's like everything has like a counter thing. It's like, I always say like inflammation, like hormesis, like short term hormesis is a good thing. That's the body's protection, right? If you whack me with a baseball bat and I get a big bruise on my arm, like that's hormesis. That's inflammation coming to heal that thing. It's the long-term inflammation that becomes the problem, right? So it's like, are you just going to keep suppressing the body? It's like, of course, we don't want people to be in pain. But I would argue how many people, their gut microbiomes are so trashed, their gut linings are so trashed, and that is creating inflammation and lipopolysaccharides, what's called LPS, in the joints. That's creating X, Y, and Z other things. How many people have toxic mold or parasites or heavy metals or the things that are driving that inflammation? Why are we not having the bigger conversation around like, well, why are those things happening? Now there are going to be people, they don't want to know.
Yeah.
Like they're going to go on eating their Chick-fil-A and their McDonald's and they're going to keep living like, okay, touche, you do you. But then there's all these other people who want something different. And, and I think that's where, a lot of these other things can really shine in these other modalities and these other support pieces. And then also with inflammation, also, having the conversation about the nervous system and, a lot of pain syndromes and things can be driven by nervous system dysregulation. And, to echo your husband, I agree with that. And also that we inherit a lot of our patterns from our mothers and going 7 generations back of women. And that's not an assault or affront on women. We are all just doing our best. Okay. That's not saying that moms are doing anything wrong. Yeah. But it is a piece of our stories, and like our mineral patterns. We get 100% of our minerals, our microbiomes, and our mitochondria from our mothers.
Right.
And so we have to be able to have, again, these bigger conversations about like, well, what's driving the bus? Inflammation didn't just show up. It's showing up as a protective mechanism, trying to clean up the mess in the body. And it sends in more inflammation to try to keep up with the assault that's happening, whether you're, living your best life or, and trying to, it's like you have to find the like, well, why are these things happening in the person? And then for everybody, that's different.
I love that. And I love the fact that, you're bringing so much wisdom about, food. And we're going to talk about that very soon, and fermented food and what that does for the gut and the importance of the gut. And obviously you touched on environment and just having that regulation. And I know that after Ian passed, I found my e-bike, which allowed me to ride through Mother Nature. And there was something incredibly powerful about that. So when our lifestyle changes, I know that if I had stayed the same, I would not have done as well as I did, even though, grief is not linear. By actually being able to do something physical. But I think more important was the breath of life, the life force, the being out in Mother Nature. And as you've said in the beginning, just, coming back to something much bigger than ourselves. And I love what you're talking about with even the microbiomes and the fact that many of these elements that we're suffering goes back 7 generations and moves down the line. And where I'm sitting, so you're kind of like almost the scientist here. And for me, if someone is really suffering from a dis-ease, and I love the way you did address disease as dis-ease, because I know, my husband used to say it's dis-ease of the mind. And that's where sort of the approach comes from, where I'm sitting with the neuro-linguistic programming and a lot of the subconscious work. So I will actually take people back 7 generations so that they can do that healing there and then, and recreate new patterns that are going to bring that body into harmony. So I'd like you to now talk me through what it would look like to create a resilient internal ecosystem where we can tap into our infinite wisdom and intelligence and bring back the body balance. Can you give me some tips through that?
Yeah, of course. I think the big thing is, number one, trusting yourself, trusting your true north, like getting into that intuitive space of like, well, what do I actually need right now? Right. Whether that is, being in nature, taking time away from your computer, is it you need movement? Is it you need time to meditate? Is it you need prayer? Is it what is it that you need? Is it, do I need to step away from my job? Do I need to step away from maybe a toxic relationship? Do I need to, whatever that is, right? I think we just don't make enough time. I think we're so busy and society is just demanding more and more and more of us. And now we're online more, right? Which is beautiful. We're able to be here together due to the magic of the internet. But, we also, the last few years, I think especially, we're being tethered more and more and more. So I think, taking breaks, getting in tune with your intuition, making time to, really breathe and sort of settle in, getting outside, get in nature, ground, move your body every day, drink real water. I think is another thing, like not all water is clean. People, like, oh, city water is clean. It's not clean.
Drinking from the dams.
Yeah. And even spring water, at this point isn't necessarily clean either. And also, even like all the data centers going in around the world, mess with the structure of water, but we are made of water. Like, so, and making sure that you're mineralizing that water. If you're just pounding a bunch of water and you're not mineralized, you're just washing away all your minerals, which are things
and bring the love to the water as well. Have you heard about that? How they did, scientific testing on water, and they would give water to people that would just think loving thoughts and just think thoughts, and because there is that energy, isn't there? And then the other group would just think hatred and anger and bitterness, and the water changed the shape, the format, and it basically was different under the microscope.
Yeah, so it structures it. Well, I have a friend who puts like labels like love. She'll put things on her like water, but let's like put it in a glass jar and sit it out in the sun and like sun charge your water, and like that's another thing that you can do, right? I fully agree. But speaking of sunlight, getting out in sunlight, it's like getting out and letting your mitochondria get fueled is fueled by photomodulation, by sunlight. So, I think it's like, sometimes it's like it's the free, most basic things that I think set us up for success. Are you sleeping well? Getting a good night's sleep, keeping those circadian rhythms in track, but also, are you charging your cell phone next to your head in your bedroom at night? Get that crap out of your room, set up a charging station somewhere else in your house, put your Wi-Fi on a house timer. I'll have all my clients, we put their Wi-Fi on a house timer, so it shuts off at a certain time and it doesn't shut back on till the next day. So those signals, you're not having to break, have that all in your house all the time. It's like, we have to get real smart about like, we have these amazing things, right? It's like, cell phones are kind of fun sometimes, having internet's great sometimes.
Absolutely.
They come with, just like medications, they come with side effects that nobody's telling you about. And so, we have to again, going into that intuitive piece, just asking ourselves questions, being good critical thinkers, is, really important. And then, again, going back into that intuitive piece of like what resonates and what doesn't. What resonates for me may not resonate for you, and that's okay.
Yes, and I mean, sleep is a big one, where people get into these cycles, and it seems like the more that they can't sleep, the more anxious they become about it, and then that creates that whole situation.
Yeah.
You talk about environment. Was that based around mainly things like your mobile cell phone and Wi-Fi and things like that, or how would you describe an environment? Like, what would you say to a person to, obviously, bring about better sleep at night?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always about environment. Like, if you're on your blue light screens and you have bright lights all over your house, it's not very conducive to winding down, so you might want to get some dimmer lights. You might want to get some red light bulbs or orange or, something maybe in the bedroom. But like, create the environment. Like right now, I live in Atlanta right now, and it's hot and it's high summer. And at 9 o'clock last night, the sun was just going down. And it's like, even on those nights, as somebody who typically goes to bed a little bit earlier than I did last night, but like, because I typically am in bed around like 9:30, 10 o'clock. Like, that's usually when I'm in bed. And like, I start closing blinds and I start turning on those red lights, even when it's brighter outside, because like, I know that I need to allow my system to start with that wind down, right? And same thing with kids. People wonder why kids get so ramped up. And I'm like, because you're, playing with them and bringing high energy things, and you're stimulating them, or stimulating with iPads in bed or lots of other things, versus setting them up to wind down. Some people might like a nice cup of sleepy tea or some L-theanine or
and patterns are so important, aren't they? Like rituals, and that give your brain a cue that it's time to wind down, it's time to go to sleep. Like you said, maybe putting on a red light, maybe just turning things off and just preparing yourself. That's so incredible. And speaking of children, because I know that you've dealt with children as well, and one of the things that I have noticed, and you did say this to me backstage, hence why I'm going to bring it up, about autism, and that you are actually seeking to, obviously you're not claiming to cure anything here, but you can see what goes on, and you're obviously working with people with inflammation, disease, and the likes of autism and even Parkinson's disease. So what would you say about maybe a child that is still high functioning autism, but seems to be very dysregulated? Do you have any kind of tips for parents or even adults these days that may need to know how to eat better and regulate themselves, if they're, obviously, if that is their way of doing life?
Right. I mean, I think with all things, and I think this can go across the board, whether that's autism or Parkinson's or other, is what's happening with their minerals, what is happening with their microbiome, what is happening with their mitochondria, and what is happening with their nervous system. Now, everybody can be a little different in all of those things, right? We are all bio individually our own people, but what I can, say is I have seen people heal their microbiomes, and I've seen kids get their verbal skills back.
Wow.
I've seen people put their autoimmune diseases in remission, and they haven't had flares and, sometimes years, and then they might have a flare up, and guess what? They get their stuff back in order and they don't have a flare again, right? But this is with all things. Like, at the end of the day, there's nuance to everything, but like, all the same things all apply. It's always the same things. Like I've yet to see a single person in my practice where these 4 things were not the prominent things that mattered in those people, right? And so it's like, I get clients sometimes, or people are like, well, I have mold and I have this and I have that. I was like, you're right, but what are the things that also happen that your body was not able to cope with those assaults later on? So, we have to sort of, I think that's what's really, tricky, right? Because I think we go to so much black and white thinking. We go to so much, it's just one thing, instead of like, wow, this could be a domino effect of several things.
Yeah.
And also, like, well, again, not as an assault on moms, but like, what did you come into the world with? And I think, unfortunately, we are bombarded consensually and non-consensually with chemicals, and kids, I think especially, are getting a load at this point that is far beyond even what I got in my own childhood. And we have to take all those things into play. And
so that child with autism that was non-verbal that you witnessed sort of coming back in, what were some of the things, like the practical things that that changed for that child?
I mean, a lot of it was working on their gut microbiome, working on their leaky guts, detoxification, supporting that. Some kids, a lot of heavy metals can sometimes be at play. Everybody's a little different. And, again, mineral status, it's all the same things. Like, it just depends. It just depends on that kid, and it just depends on the parent. And, picky eating is a huge piece.
Yes.
Oftentimes in spectrum disorders. And so, that's a place where we have to work on that, because, nutrients are fuel. And, we have to be able to, get real nutrition. So it's like, but you also have to be able to digest and absorb what you're eating. If your gut is inflamed and everything is hijacked and your microbiome is hijacked, and this goes to everyone, right? Like, how are you assimilating nutrients? You're not going to be able to. You're not going to, you could be eating the cleanest organic diet and eating the rainbow of fruits and vegetables, but if you can't break that down and you can't absorb it and you can't get it past the cell membrane and you can't convert it into its final form, you're going to be depleted anyway, right? So it's like, that's another reason, though, that's like, that's why food matters.
Right? So you're suggesting that it's dietary, so it's really about bringing them back. And obviously you're a great believer in the fermented food as well. And speaking of which, I showed you before that I've got sitting here on my desk some homemade cabbage that I'm turning into sauerkraut. And it's interesting that, we were brought together today, because the person that I was talking to was talking about, the gut, and she believes that the gut is the third brain and probably the most important brain. So if the gut does have a brain, could that possibly mean then that, is the symptoms really a bad thing, or are they just a way of our body saying, I need equilibrium and I need change, and wanting to sort of, like it's craving that beautiful biological balance again. So it's almost, you talked about illness that doesn't just come overnight. Like, you hear about all of these shock diagnoses. And yet, even though the diagnosis might come as a great shock, it didn't just land on that person on that day.
No.
Can you talk us through where that comes from? Is that an accumulation? Yeah. What's going on with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, how many people do we see? Like, this happens all the time, or somebody will come in and they're like, oh, well, it just all of a sudden happened, and I'm like, you know what? The thing is like, we always use like a bucket analogy in functional medicine. It's like you have a bucket and that bucket is filling up, and your bucket could have been like 95% full. You just didn't realize it. And then that big assault happens, right? All of a sudden you're like, got mold, you got Lyme, you got whatever has happened, right? And it just knocks the bucket over. And then you have this like, huge thing. But I think, we all are getting degrees of symptoms. I think before that, I think we're getting signals. It's just, we may not always realize it. I think we live in a world, unfortunately, where it's like, shake it off. I grew up in a shake it off mentality. It's like, I played sports. It was like, great, you got injured, you baby it a little bit, but like, shake it off, like, get back in there, you kid, and
go through the pain.
Yeah. And like, yes, there's some character in that is built that, but also on the other side of that is sometimes we start just pushing things off. We don't think like that trigger finger is a signal, or, that, I don't know, the scratchy throat, the postnasal drip, the, whatever it is, people think like, oh, it's just normal for your thyroid not to be, dysregulated, and you go on thyroid meds. We have lots of things that are like, are signalers, right? That we don't always realize are, things that are filling the cup, things that are starting to add up, because we've made things so benign all the time. And and then things get missed, and then we kind of wonder why the bucket got knocked over. And, I get people all the time, they come in, they're like, they're very confused why this happened. And it's like, no, this was burning, and you just didn't know it was slow burning. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, things happen, it's like, I sat down with a family this week. And I work with adults too, so it's just funny. I just keep talking about kiddos today. Just got like a lot of kiddos coming in lately, but and this poor kiddo got, is young and diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is really alarming. And the parents are like, but there was nothing that, like nothing telling us like what, other than she was tired. And it was like, well, there was clearly other things, but you maybe didn't put together like the dry skin, or, you maybe didn't put together, X, Y, and Z, whatever, things other than the fatigue. And that's okay. You didn't know. Like, we don't know what we don't know. Like,
absolutely,
we have to give
100%
grace when we don't know things, right? And so, but it's that bucket. It's just like, things can be filling up, and we don't know it. And it's a disjustice, at the end of the day, because I always tell people, like, better, you do better. But if you don't know, how do you do better? And and that's always, I think, the tricky piece.
I love that. I love what you've said. So just to sort of like recap a little bit here, you are a great advocate on the lifestyle and discussing how we do need to get back into that nature, that expansion. Also the fact that we need to have healthy sleep. We need to be able to have those proper patterns, routines where we begin to wind down slowly. You talked about sunlight and how the importance of sunlight. I know that I love to get up in the morning and see the sun, because you can look at the sun, and it's actually safe to do that when it's just peeping through the sky. And of course, moving the body. So moving the body. It's never too late, because you've discussed about the accumulation effect and the fact that disease just didn't bang on overnight. So it's not too late to have a healthy body. You can start now. And, if you begin taking all these things into, obviously consideration, hydration, which we've discussed, water, and clean water, as Cheryl has said. And, obviously, having that, just regulating the nervous system. Is there perhaps any tips that you could give us on, people that are suffering so much anxiety, even children? I know breath work, there's a lot of talk around breath work, and you've given us a lot of healthy tips here. What would you suggest to the person who needs to desperately regulate?
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big dance. I'm a big fan of breath work. I'm a big fan of things like tapping, like so EFT, emotional freedom technique.
Do you
You know,
understand the law of that? Like, I just want to pause you there for a moment because, that's quite a gold nugget. I understand. I mean, I do EFT myself. I am not a preacher, teacher, trainer of it as I am with my other, techniques. And I'd like to understand that better because it does work. And is it about the fact that we are facing what we're dealing with, and then we're kind of putting a different language on the end of it and then tapping on certain spots? Is it to do with the acupuncture points? Like, what is it that's really helping a
yeah.
person shift so much? Because you can use it for sleep, you can use it for pain,
Mhm.
you can use it for, anger, and basically you're sort of starting with a karate chop, aren't you? And you're sort of stating like what the issues are and getting it all out, sort of just speaking it all out. And then you're kind of using the words, even though this is my
Yeah.
issue, filling the blanks, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I'm feeling that, and then ending it with, I truly love and value myself. Is
Yep.
there any kind of reason, rhyme or reason that moving through those points actually helps shift it?
Well, I mean, we're energetic beings. So I think anything can help move energy, right? Like it's a choice. Tapping, it helps calm the nervous system. It does tap on those Chinese meridians. Just like, there are things like photomodulation patches, LifeWave and all these other things that, you can use acupuncture points. But, acupuncture itself is doing the same kind of thing. I love acupuncture. I love Chinese medicine. But being in nature, if you walk around barefoot, grounding, that
Yes.
actually is naturally moving those things. I mean, lots of people have anxiety for lots of reasons, and the gut and the microbiome definitely can play a role in that,
Yeah.
of course. But I think, again, it's sometimes is about presence. It's sometimes about giving the nervous system time to heal. This is where I love things like somatics and brain resetting, can be really amazing. Vagus nerve stimulation, whether that is just even simple things like standing and bouncing. You don't have to have a fancy rebounder. It's like, look, we have all these amazing gadgets, right?
Mm.
You can get vagus nerve stimulators, Apollos, and various things like that. But like, you don't have to have this fancy stuff in order to regulate. Our ancestors did not have to have fancy stuff in order to regulate. So again, sometimes we like to borrow a tool from the fancy toolbox. Cool. If that works for you, great, do it. But we also have all these things that are free and to us, but it means our presence. It means our presence to slow down and just take some time for ourselves. And it's hard. I think so much of the anxiety is burnout. People are
Oh, yeah.
fried.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, the last few years, especially, I think people are fried. And I haven't met a single person in my practice who's come in and it's like their nervous system isn't, and their anxiety is not high. But it's like, great. So then you disconnect from social media. You take the news off your phone. You start
Mm.
making conscious choices, right? Things to help you regulate. Some people know what's driving their anxiety, some people do not. And those are big distinguishers, right? So it's like with all things, we all have to take the responsibility to start peeling the onion a little bit, and sort of figuring out, well, like, what are the things that are driving my anxiety? If I can figure them out, and then where are the places where it's like I might want to work with a skilled practitioner so I can get some other support pieces in place. There's nothing wrong with that. Like nutritional deficiencies can drive anxiety, also. So
Mm.
it's like, and it may not be one thing. It could be, the series of things.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's what's the most important. And it's like, you won't know what works for you until you try things. How do you know
Yeah.
what you like unless you try it? How do you know what you don't like unless you
100%.
try it? Yeah, you're right. I think we're so often like we're scared to invest in our time in ourselves or some money in ourselves. And I think it really comes back to like have you heard of like the 7 layers of consciousness?
Yes.
And I think that's really what
All about consciousness. I have done such extensive research. So
yeah.
powerful.
So we have like our environmental layer, we have a biochemical layer, we have our bioelectrical layer. So right, that's kind of where like the acupuncture and all these like our energetic force comes in. We have an intuitive layer, we have a spiritual layer. I'm forgetting one in or two in there. We have a physical layer, and then we have one other one that I forgot. But like we have all these different layers of they're all functioning pieces of what make us up. And I think what's really interesting, if we tie this back to the microbiome for a hot second, our microbiome responds to all of those layers.
Yes.
And it's like, we are more microbial than we are human. Our microbes talk to
Mm.
our DNA talks back. Our mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, right? Maybe you learned about this in biology in high school or something, but like our mitochondria is actually part of our microbiome. We have a mitobiome, right? And so like all these things, they synergize over and over and over again. And so when we, consider the bigger picture of how we bring the body into balance, we have to focus on all those things. And like we live in a hard world. It is hard. Okay. I'm a practitioner. I'll be the first one to tell you. Is my diet on point all the time? No. Am I getting, all my exercise as much as I would want every single day? No. I have days where that doesn't always happen. Right. Like I'm a person too, I think we sometimes put practitioners on like these pedestals of, whatever, but the reality is like, we're still people.
We're the ones that have suffered. You are living proof of how you have done so much work on yourself, on your health. I mean, being the keeper of the living microbiome. So I'm hearing to come back to the primitive as well. Like, our grandmothers, they didn't spend a fortune on all of the things. And if we revive the ancient fermentation traditions to restore our body and our balance, can you give us, as we come into closing now, because obviously I could have a whole nother 2 hours with you, but I'd love to be able to talk about what we can practically put in our body to help us to have those right organisms. So, for example, are there some suggestions at the supermarket that we can put in our fridge at home or in our cupboards at home to help that?
Well, and just quickly, I'm going to go backwards to go forwards again a little bit,
Right.
which is
I'm all for that.
we kind of keep dancing around the microbiome, but like microbial, fermented, cultured, live, probiotic foods, they're not going to be canned. They're not going to be on a shelf. They're wild. They're not shelf stable. So you're going to find them like in a refrigerator, etc. So sauerkraut and kimchi and miso and cheese, and there are a lot of things just to define a little bit for maybe people listening. But I think here's the thing with like, I have a little bit of a theory. I think fermented foods could save the world. We'll talk about that maybe another time. But I think the thing here is that people have always been eating microbial foods. Like fermentation is over 10,000 years old by written documentation. Our ancestors have always known to ferment, whether they knew to call it fermentation or not. I think this is really important. However, I will make one amendment, because before you run out there and you just start jamming yourself full of sauerkraut, some people, like, especially I think given sort of the current status, I think, of the world and people's guts, some people can't actually handle microbial foods yet. It's a real bummer because, their guts are so inflamed. They're so leaky. They're so full of histamine, and microbial foods are high in histamines. So
Right.
I want to make it just a disclaimer, I guess, that like, just like all things, there are sometimes points where people cannot handle fermented foods right now. That doesn't mean that you can't handle them later. I'm a master fermentationist. I have a fermentation company called Contraband Ferments. And when I was dealing with mold and Lyme at the same time, which was really sucked a few years ago. I had 2 years where I was like, I just couldn't eat any fermented foods because my body couldn't handle the histamine load.
Wow.
My system was so overloaded with dealing with the mold and the Lyme. My body just couldn't tolerate it. But like, here's the thing. We have this magical thing where it's like, we can rebuild the microbiome, and I think, it's like, we may not be able to rebuild it 100% to its original status, but we can do a lot to heal it, and we can regrow good commensal bacteria, and we can stave out overgrowths and things that are sort of, in balance. Again, it's a yin and a yang. It's like, we all have some H. pylori. We all have a little bit of funky bacteria. That's good. That's not a bad thing, right? That's good signaling for the immune system. We have to change, again, that lens in which we think of things. But, ways that we can feed the microbiome, like eat the rainbow, eat with the seasons. When I say eat the rainbow, like, try to get a diversity of colors.
Colors, yes. They reckon the more colors, the more healthy.
Yeah. Eat white food, eat yellow food, but like, eat real food. Cheetos doesn't count as an orange food in the rainbow, right? So like, we have to, again, perspective, have an 80-20 philosophy, 80% real food, 20% flexibility. I can't control all the seed oils in the world while I attempt to avoid them as much as possible. If I'm traveling and I have to eat out somewhere, I may not 100% be able to, control that. Like, 20%, right? Okay, yeah, occasionally our family goes for ice cream.
We've got to be easy on ourselves. I feel that as human nature, this is one of the biggest problems that happens is people want to get healthy. They go on a diet, which, God forbid, I hate that word, having the word die in it. I mean, surely it can't be a good thing. So they think because they stuffed up, they may have eaten the wrong food. Oh, that's it. They've got to start all over again and start next week. They'll set another date. I say it is never too late. Start now. If you eat chocolate like I did half an hour ago, just know that right now you can do something for yourself. But I'm going to show you something that's very in sync with what we have. This here, for the first time in my life, I have attempted to make sauerkraut.
In a measuring cup, we might add, which is fantastic.
In a measuring cup, and because it's glass, and I've covered it with a cabbage patch on the top. So it's covered there. It's sitting here, and I probably shouldn't have it near my Wi-Fi because we obviously want to make sure it's really healthy. But I've got to wait for 3 or 4 days. And so sauerkraut. So, that sort of thing. What about yogurt? Can I ask, is it, is yogurt as good as they say because that's got a lot of those probiotics in it as well?
Yeah, I mean, yogurt's great. Kefir is great. Like, I think the big thing is, I think when people can make that stuff themselves, it's much more diverse. I mean, we run it when we start getting to yogurt and things, there's a whole conversation about like lab cultivated bacteria versus live wild bacteria and all these other things. But like, live microbial foods, like, and learning to make them yourself. I'm a big believer in like, have skills. Like, learn to cook. I have a gentleman I'm working with who didn't eat anything but cereal. Like, literally, cereal and takeout.
It's easy. That must have been a bachelor.
And, so every week part of his homework is I make him like a quick 5-minute Zoom video. And it was like, here's how to fry an egg. Here's how to scramble an egg. Here's how to, and every week we just started learning.
That's right.
But as part of his coaching, because he didn't have anything, and some people, like, they psych themselves out. And I get the same thing with fermentation. People are afraid they're going to kill themselves. They're afraid they're going to get botulism. They're afraid and it's like, okay, let's back up the train, and we work on the education piece. But it's like, it's so fascinating to me. It's like, we come up with a million reasons of psyching ourselves out for why we do or do not do things. And we all do it. we all do it. I'm as
We
guilty.
all do it.
Yeah, we all do
None
it.
of us
Like, I'm as
are
guilty as
free
yeah.
of that kind of behavior. So just know. So, Cheryl, you're bringing together the science of the microbiome, the art of fermentation, traditional food preservation, and herbal wisdom. And, you've really been able to enlighten us about the lifestyle changes that we can make. And what I love is that you've given us really simple and practical understandings. Now, we will have all of your details in the show notes. So when people want to really, you've only caught a snippet of the iceberg here. This person is absolutely, this is her infinite wisdom. This is the passion and, where it all comes from. So our body is remarkable, and it has the capacity and the resilience for all of this beautiful balance. And I'm going to ask you the question that I always love to ask every person before we end the show, and that is that if there's anything that you want to kind of rehash on here, or, you had special words to say about, your passion of what you understand about what we've spoken about, the microbiome, and you being that, functional health practitioner, what would you want to share with the audience?
I mean, the only thing permanent in the world is change. So, if you try to do everything all once, you're not going to be able to do it. If you start doing it a little bit at a time, you'll be able to do it. So you just have to, decide, what do I actually want? Right. And I think that's just about focus. Like,
I love that. And can I add to it?
Yeah.
Eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I mean, it's like you have to adopt the pace of nature. I mean, and that's really, and it's a pace of patience. It's like, just like I was saying earlier, like the body doesn't just miraculously like flip over. Things can flip quickly. I've seen that happen, but it's like, it's a pace of patience, right? It's like, we all have to play the bigger, long game, right? Not everything is, fast, and not everything is easy, and not everything is, and it's like, that's life. Like, deal with it.
That's right. That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
Check your pulse. We all have our downfalls. And these are those snippets of moments where we can look at even the pain in our body, the inflammation, the emotional suffering. Instead of looking at it as your enemy, look at it as a gift for you to be able to say, what can I do to make a change? Cheryl, I want to thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I know we've only just got started. I'll definitely have you on again. And thank you so much for bringing your wisdom.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.